Tropical Storm Nicholas is headed for the Texas coast. Good afternoon, I'm Mike Naso here with the YouTube Tropical Update. Monday afternoon, about 5:30 Eastern Time, you can see this beautiful true color visible image from the College of DuPage website of the United States, the lower 48 that is, and there is a lot of moisture headed for Texas and Louisiana from our Tropical Storm Nicholas, which has been trying to consolidate one center, but it's been having trouble. Nevertheless, it's up to a moderate range tropical storm, and it could be close to hurricane strength at landfall tonight. Here's the latest on Nicholas from the National Hurricane Center as of 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern. It was at 27.4 north, 96.4 west, winds of 65, moving north-northeast now at 12, and that motion should continue until landfall, say around 11 p.m. tonight, maybe midnight, 2 a.m., something like that. And we do have a hurricane watch just in case it becomes a hurricane from Port Aransas to San Luis Pass, Texas. We also have a tropical storm warning from Baffin Bay to Sabine Pass, and storm surge warnings including Galveston Bay, Aransas Bay, San Antonio Bay, Matagorda Bay, and a storm surge watch all the way up to Rutherford Beach, Louisiana, because we will have the onshore flow and the water rise. Nevertheless, you got to realize there's a very little difference between a 70-mile-an-hour tropical storm and a 74-mile-an-hour Category 1 hurricane. It just kind of goes in the record as, boom, a hurricane landfall in the United States. So that's the difference, but that's more for the weather nerds like me. As far as the people on the coast, the impacts won't be that different with wind. We are seeing a lot of gusty winds high up, the hurricane hunters reporting well into hurricane force, but they haven't burst down to the center yet. The computer models are in good agreement, taking Nicholas north-northeast right into landfall, and then kind of dilly-dallying here over the Gulf Coast over the next couple of days, dropping copious amounts of rain. Now here's the latest radar out of Corpus Christi, and at the beginning you see what almost looks like an eye trying to develop an eye wall, and then it kind of fizzles out, and then we get a new thing developing. That's clearly because of this shear affecting it. And the waters are hot, but the wind shear is very high, and it's just not able to consolidate an eye. Nevertheless, in this area here, very gusty winds, very nasty weather, headed right there into the Texas coastline, and that will only become greater as time goes on. Here's the satellite imagery. You can see that bursting there is what we see on the radar, but again, the center is displaced, and it just hasn't been able to spin up the way it could have. You can see that flatness here on the western side. Thank you, wind shear. This wind shear here, you can see blowing right into Nicholas. If it didn't have this over this type of hot water, oh my goodness, Nick would have been a hurricane, maybe even a strong one. You can see very, very hot water here, and that's keeping that moisture pumping in, and that is going to be the main threat with this system. You can see from the Hurricane Center track, landfall expected, if this is 1 a.m., say sometime, like I said, 11 midnight, in the general vicinity of Matagorda Bay, Port O'Connor. It should move right on up towards Matagorda, and oh, look, a nuclear power plant. That's wonderful. And then straight on into Bay City and areas further north, the more metropolitan areas of Houston will be impacted. But again, it's not going to be a tight coiled eye wall like Hurricane Ida. This is going to be more of a sloppy system, and so the rainfall will impact this whole area here, and that is the main threat. Look at these forecasts from the Weather Prediction Center. Easy 3, 4, 5 inches of rain over the next 3 days, way more than that in isolated local amounts. You can see spreading into Louisiana and Mississippi as well. The risk of flash flooding, high in areas from Matagorda Bay all the way over towards the border of Louisiana, including Galveston Bay. You guys have that seawall to protect you from the surge, which could be high, by the way, 5 feet in some areas. That's nothing you want to be around, but definitely listen to your local officials there and stay away from the water. But the flash flooding could occur inland, and you even have a moderate risk all the way back to New Orleans, Lake Charles, areas here still under the gun from the impact of Hurricane Ida back on August the 29th. The key messages as of 4 p.m. Central: heavy rainfall, southeast Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi through the middle of the week. Significant rainfall amounts, potentially life-threatening flash and urban flooding, especially in highly urbanized metropolitan areas. Houston, you flood just as bad as New Orleans. For the young kids watching, or the teenagers, you guys don't remember, back in June of '01, Tropical Storm Allison was just a 60-mile-an-hour storm, but it flooded Houston bad. So those metropolitan areas can flood really bad. Number 2, there is a danger of life-threatening surge from Port Aransas to Sabine Pass. Residents in those areas, like I said, follow advice given by your local officials. I'm sure what they'll tell you is don't be by the water and be at higher ground. Number 3, Nicholas is forecast to approach the mid-Texas coast this evening as a strong tropical storm and could be near hurricane strength at landfall. It is possible that this makes hurricane strength, and tropical storm conditions are expected along the mid and upper Texas coast this evening and tonight, with hurricane conditions possible from Port Aransas to San Luis Pass. Again, the hurricane hunters have been measuring very strong winds, but they're not at the surface yet, but a good burst could make Nick a hurricane before landfall. You can see, other than Nicholas, we have our moderate chance from this tropical wave of development north of the Bahamas. This could be a threat to the East Coast in a few days, so watch that. A high likelihood of development is wave leaving Africa. You can see 80% chance, and it's going to move straight on out into the central Atlantic. This is actually already an Invest 95L. You can see it's forecast to move generally in a westerly to west-northwest direction. So if you are in the Northern Islands, watch this even closer than you watched Larry. Remember, Larry got to Bermuda and Newfoundland. This system might get further west in the long run. We're going to watch it carefully. Right now it's leaving Africa looking pretty hot. It's got that shape to it, bursting. And once it moves over water, we'll likely see development into a tropical depression, then a tropical storm, then probably a hurricane, and possibly even a strong hurricane. Here's the ensembles. You can see it brings the system all the way out here, south of Bermuda, north of the islands. Again, we don't have a definitive turnout like we had with Larry. Some want to bend it back west with a ridge of high pressure building back in. That could be a threat to land masses further west, but again, it's leaving Africa. We've got plenty of time to watch it. But some of the computer models, look here. This is the Canadian model. Look what it does. It brings our Nicholas over the Gulf Coast, drenches it, and then look at our system, comes very close to the Northern Islands, and then it is a threat as we get potentially a move back towards the west, and then another system developing behind it. So hurricane season 2021 is still raging, with the main threat tonight, Nicholas, impacting the Texas coast. I'm Mike Naso, and I'll be back with the latest on our YouTube Tropical Update page.